Don't ask about the jacket. It's the only thing I have that's clean and doesn't look like shit right now. Alexander the Great. What a guy. This backwater barbarian kingdom fucking walks up to the ancient world stage, lays his dick out, and the kid on the seat of the throne goes, let's go east. And on nothing but that, they think they can conquer the Persian Empire? Excuse me? He did that. He did that, and he did not lose a single battle. It wasn't even close. Alexander's stunning win rate and, frankly, absurd path of conquest has mystified people for generations from the day he stepped onto the Anatolian Peninsula. And while I would love to go into all the ins and outs of Alexander's battles, there's already a million videos out there with better production quality and better research than I am capable of producing. But you know what no one is talking about? The way ancient people looked at the bullshittery of Alexander's life and tried to make that fit into a mental model, try to explain what the fuck happened there. Some said he was a wizard. Other people thought he was a god. And others, well, they just wrote fanfiction about him. I will be discussing all these things and more, but if you've been here before, you might be asking yourself, Alex, what the fuck? 5 out of your last 7 videos have been about the Holy Roman Empire, and now you're just switching to Alexander the Great on a dime? Why? Aside from, the namesake. Well, I'll tell you why. It's because this video has a sponsor. That's right. It has a sponsor, and that sponsor is me. If you've been around here for a while, you've heard me mention my novels in passing. I've hinted at some of the things I've worked on. Well, now it's time to come out with the truth. This whole channel was a psyop to get you to buy my books. And I'm bringing up Alexander the Great because this video is sponsored by my debut novel, Iskander's Game and the Shadow of Macedon. This is an Amazon proof. This gray stripe that says not for resale is not on the actual copies. Before I say anything more about this project, here's a trailer that I made mainly out of videos I scalped off of Pixabay. Too many people see hope in the future. Some falsely correlate their own prospects to advanced technology. Others are too easily captured by the empty promises of ideology. I have no future, and thus I must look to the past. Alexander the Great's tomb never sank beneath the ocean like the stories say, and I've heard it calling to me. But in the world of magic and secret societies that I wander, solo acts aren't taken too kindly. People know who's in and who's out. I may be a defector, but I know my competition much better than they know me. The Tiandi Hui, the Heaven and Earth Society. My former clan has come from the Far East at the lead of my brother, butting their noses in where they smell profit and prestige. The ancient House of Aset knows they have the home advantage and plan on using it to its fullest extent. The artifacts within should save their failing economy. The Hecatian Circle has a blood right to anything of Alexander's. The arcane arms race would be put to shame by the tomb's contents. The circle that started this whole race to begin with, the Coven of Latium. Driven by a sense of European heritage, they leaked their own leads to shut defectors like me out of the competition. The Palatine Order of Cologne can't afford to lose its hegemony over Europe, so they say. But their true prize is an accomplice of mine who possesses a skill they refuse to let go of. I may have no circle to call home, but I'm not the only one. People with scores to settle are a dime a dozen in Magician Society. Plenty of them will be enemies, but in this world, torn apart by feuding interests, drained by paranoia, and ruled from the shadows, you never know who might turn out to be an ally. After all, there's nothing impossible to him who will try. Live in shame or die with honor. Iskander's Game, the shadow of Macedon. Live in shame or die with honor. Such was the dilemma of Achilles. After being framed for treason by his younger brother, Henry Zhang finds himself in a similar position. He's been disgraced and branded a fugitive exile from the Heaven and Earth Society, a secret magician circle based out of China. With no life left to return to, only one thing guides his path forward. The lost tomb of Alexander the Great is on the verge of being rediscovered, and to Henry, the idea of forever humiliating his circle sounds like a stellar way to make them think twice about the next time they want to antagonize him. Only thing being, he's on his own, facing down every magician circle from England to China. Organized, funded, and brimming with manpower. In order to fight his way to the top of this competition, Henry is going to have to team up with 3 other exiles just as untrustworthy as any of his competitors. But for the sake of the lost tomb and his own honor, he'll have to put his trust in these people if any of them are to have a sliver of a chance of finding the tomb and the apocalyptic secrets buried within. Iskander's Game, The Shadow of Macedon, as you can see here with some wonderful cover art by my amazing artist, Kira Nguyen, which I will put up in beautiful high definition, is the first book in an action-adventure urban fantasy series based around treasure hunting fiction like Uncharted and Indiana Jones, mixed with the mythology and folklore-based fantasy of something like Rick Riordan, Percy Jackson, that sort of thing. With some martial arts action sprinkled on, for spice. And this is the official announcement that this book is coming out and is now officially available for pre-order on Kindle, and on May 21st will be available on Amazon and pretty much everywhere else wherever Ingram Spark distributes to in paperback and ebook forms. If you're not sold on it just yet, worry not. On my website, I have the first 2 chapters available for download for free, and if you do find yourself interested in this and foresee yourself forgetting to pick up a copy on May 21st, you can join my emailing list where I will scream at you from the void about getting one of these. And if that's too grandma coded for you, we have a Discord now that is specifically dedicated to announcements because I don't know anyone willing to moderate a Discord server for me. So it's just for announcements. But if you don't like emailing lists, it's there. Links to both are in the description, as well as the 2 free chapters and the pre-order page. So, yeah, this video is mostly an ad with some historical content tacked onto it. So, speaking of historical content, let's actually get into that. Now, all the fan fiction that is, within the public consciousness about Alexander the Great mostly revolves around his dubious sexuality, we'll call it. My opinion on the whole matter is that I think Alexander loved conquering more than he did anyone's genitals. But that whole area of debate doesn't really interest me, and there's plenty of stuff out there about it. What does interest me is the Alexander romance, which is the most successful novel of the ancient world and is just full of horse shit about Alexander the Great. But it's entertaining horse shit, so still worth a read. In spite of its name, the Alexander romance is not your typical romance novel, as you might have gathered by the fact that it was published before the birth of Christ. But it does prove that romances being the best-selling books has been a trend since the classical age, apparently. Maybe I should just write a fucking romantasy book and be financially secure for the rest of my life. The Alexander romance's opening scene is about the last pharaoh of Egypt, Nectanebo II, foreseeing the fall of his kingdom to the Persians. So, according to this book, he fucks off to Macedon, falls in love with Olympia of Epirus, aka Philip of Macedon's wife, aka Alexander's mother.
My right son! My right son! My right son! My right son!
I feel it necessary to say here that Philip II of Macedon gets done really dirty by history. Alexander wasn't the biggest fan of his dad for... well, not for nothing. There are some reasons there. Alexander was almost not king of Macedon, and his mother was like Philip's fourth wife. So there is that. But people kind of took this dislike of Philip in stride, and now throughout almost every single story about Alexander the Great, Philip II of Macedon is a cuck. So in the Alexander romance, Alexander is actually the son of Nectanebo, who is magic apparently, and sends Philip a magic dream to allay his suspicions about him having an affair with his wife. While growing up, Alexander casually kills Nectanebo in cold blood, in addition to other normal childhood activities, such as competing in the Olympics. And also studying with Aristotle, but that actually happened and is less batshit insane. Most of Alexander's life, as recorded in the Alexander romance, through his father's death and into his conquests, is more or less true to life. There isn't anything particularly crazy that happens. The romance does erroneously call Alexander's wife Roxanne a daughter of the Persian emperor, which she was not. She was a Sogdian princess who he married for love. He did marry either the daughter or the sister of Darius, or he married a relative of Darius at some point, and I forget who. Shit in the romance starts getting weird when it talks about Alexander's adventures, including going to the land of darkness, which might be Abkhazia in Georgia, or might be Slough.
I'm sorry. I've made a big mistake. I went to Slough.
One of these adventures is about Alexander's cook, Andreas, who catches some fish from a body of water that turns out to be the Fountain of Life, inspired by Gilgamesh, and the Fountain of Life is just the Fountain of Youth, but instead of turning you young when you drink it, you just become immortal, like flat out. And he knows this because after gutting the fish comes back to life. The cook drinks some for himself, obviously, and then bottles some for later to, let me check my notes, seduce Alexander's daughter with it. There's some dating advice for you fellas. Become immortal. Anyway, Alexander finds out about the fish somehow, but not about the water that the cook drank, nor the water that he saved to bang his daughter. The cook succeeds in his attempts to seduce Alexander's daughter, and she becomes immortal, forcing Alexander to exile both of them. The cook becomes a demon of the sea, and the daughter becomes a demon of the desert. So they can, never be together again, because sea and desert, not compatible. I was a literature student for 4 years and managed to not go insane, so I get to analyze things how I want to analyze them. I have a $40,000 piece of paper that says so. Throughout the romance, Alexander is also depicted with 2 ram's horns. Nectanebo is shown having 2 horns, so his son has a similar protruding growth. It's also a common motif in depictions of Zeus Ammon, which is the god whose temple Alexander visits in Siwa, and whose oracle tells Alexander that you are the son of a god. But outside the world of the romance, the horns still have a certain significance. In esoteric tradition, 2 horns symbolize the culmination of the brow chakra, sometimes referred to as the opening of the third eye, and that's where all that shit comes from. So if you ever see 2 horns on a statue, that's the equivalent of like a Indian or Chinese statue that has a third eye. Hell, I think there are some lines in the Bible about Moses having horns, which I'm not super sure about because it's been a while since I've read the Bible. But if I remember correctly, more conventional theologies, man, there are ways to explain that away that are not esoteric in nature. But in my humble opinion, it gives the Old Testament a little bit of edge that it needs, aside from all the other stuff. You know what? Every sacred text in every religion has some like horrific imagery, all right? War and genocide do not make you special. Apparently, in real life, after meeting with the Oracle of Zeus Ammon, Alexander started wearing a ceremonial pair of ram's horns everywhere. So it's kind of a whole thing. But I'll get into what the esoterics and all those like weird, wacky secret society people believe later. One of the main aspects of the Alexander romance that I personally am a fan of is the idea of the gates of Alexander. If you're Muslim, you probably know what I'm talking about, since this idea really took off in the Middle Eastern renditions of the Alexander romance, though they might be more familiar to you as Yajuj and Majuj. Without going too deep into the lore of Noah's lineage, which that's a whole iceberg, Gog and Magog are, in the Book of Revelation and the Quran, two cannibal tribes that will be allies of Satan in the apocalypse and will herald its coming. Now, like with a lot of prophecies, people have prescribed Gog and Magog to be certain people groups, mostly steppe tribes, because, I mean, let's be real, if the same spot in the grasslands keeps shitting out natural disasters in the form of nomadic herdsmen, you gotta start thinking to yourself, maybe the ancients were onto something. Jokes aside, the Alexander romance started this little rumor that Gog and Magog were being held back from the civilized world, but once they got in, that's when the apocalypse starts. What were they being held back by? The Caspian Gates, or the Gates of Alexander. It's a giant wall. It's a gigantic wall said to be in somewhere either in Anatolia, Dailam, which is North Persia, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, or the Caucasus. I buy the Caucasus story because A, the Caucasus does actually block off the Middle East from the Eurasian steppe, and B, I can actually go to the Caucasus, which is not possible with Dailam.
Hey Bobby, look, I'm American.
I think I'll use my credit card.
It's said that once the Gogs and Magogs break through the Caspian Gates, the apocalypse starts. I thought this story was rad as hell, so I stole it for my book. It's the main thing that actually got me to start writing Iskander's game. If you don't know, Iskander is the Middle Eastern way of saying Alexander. And I used it in the book's title because it sounded cool, and also because it would be really weird if I used my own name in the title and then my name was also on the author line. So yeah, the story as it goes in the Islamic tradition, or at least the way that the Egyptian girl I used to talk with described it to me, is that the Gogs and Magogs would dig at the wall every single day, almost breaking through. But before they got through, they would get too tired and decide, we'll finish tomorrow, and then go to sleep, which, relatable. But in the night, God would come down and sabotage all their work and rebuild the wall, so when they woke up, they'd have to start all over again. And this has been going on for thousands and thousands of years. Look, no one said the Gogs and Magogs were smart, okay? They're cannibals. It's like mad cow disease or something. This is a short aside, but you know all those motivational influencers, specifically the ones for men, because motivation for men is basically lift this bar or your entire family will die. That's kind of what Alexander was to medieval Europeans. All his medieval legends are about him striking out to see the world, and I don't know. I don't think it's insane to say that some of the Crusaders and probably the explorers in the Age of Discovery looked up to Alexander as sort of a role model for the exploration and going into the unknown bit, not the genocide and showing up at the right place at the right time to topple all the empires of the New World part. Although Alexander was a kind of Faustian figure, as preachers like Bertold von Regensburg, see, I did work the Holy Roman Empire in, like to talk about how Alexander's ambition was bad, actually, and it led him to an early grave, which, debatable. Okay, so the word apocryphal, right, looks and sounds absurdly cool. Only to have the most disappointing definition for a word with that much aura that I've ever seen. An apocryphal text is just a text attributed to someone that it probably wasn't written by. That's it. But the Umayyad Caliphate they were real big on Alexander and resurrected a bunch of apocryphal letters between Alexander and Aristotle that had been around since the time of the Roman Republic. And some of these letters became a big part of the Book of Secrets of Secrets. That's not a typo, that's just what it's called. Which is one of the texts the Islamic empires translated from ancient Greek that then gave a boost up to the European Renaissance when the West decided they had had enough playtime with their Germanic heritage. And you know what? Thank fuck the Umayyads did that, because when the Islamic Caliphates first burst onto the scene, they were about to adopt the Persian narrative of Alexander. What do you think the Persians and Iranians think of Alexander? Might it be a tad bit negative? Alexander is the great spirit of evil. He is the enemy of Iran and of true religion. The most generous interpretation the Zoroastrians had of Alexander was as a seeker of truth. So the bar is in hell. Oh yeah, and the Iranian legends about Alexander made up some interesting genealogies for him. Once again, putting Philip of Macedon into the mythological cuck chair. They claimed that his mother was a concubine of Darius II, so making it actually the guy who brought in all the foreign rulers into Persia and destroyed the Achaemenid Empire was actually the true heir of the Persian Empire, so it's still Persian. Look, Iranians, I have an immense respect for your history and culture. Y'all have done some pretty cool stuff. And believe me, the second your government dies, I'm flying out to Tehran. But this, it's cope. It's coping and seething. Okay? So according to the ancient Greek historian Plutarch, Alexander was born the same night that the Temple of Artemis was burned down by a lunatic. The one in Ephesus. Yeah, there's not much left, but it's still cool. Ephesus is cool. Is that actually how it went down? We don't know. But I like to think it is. Most of the ancients believed it was because Artemis was too busy ensuring that Alexander was delivered properly. Others believed it was some kind of omen. But some, specifically the mystery schools and esoteric societies throughout history, believed that the Temple of Artemis was a sacrifice. I'm about to get fucking deep into some esoteric lore. So if y'all aren't into that sort of thing, be advised. It's not something I think I genuinely believe, but it's very interesting. It's a lot. It's a lot of shit. So for those who don't know, esoteric schools are these secret societies that exist to pursue secret truths about the universe, and they can be found fucking everywhere. Mesopotamia, Egypt, ancient Greece, Rome, the Islamic Caliphates, medieval Europe, the early modern period, industrial America, everywhere. The Illuminati is one of these, and I'm not talking about the modern interpretation of the Illuminati. I mean the Bavarian Illuminati, which is a 17th century mystery school, 17th or 18th century, I don't remember. But they come from Germany. Ja, ich heiße Hans, ich liebe Bier und Weißwurst und Bayern ist der beste Bundesland, ja? To oversimplify a very, very long and complicated chunk of lore, the secret societies basically believe that we all live in the Matrix and that the gods and spirits and demons of our mythology are Agent Smith.
Hate this place.
More or less. Back during classical Greece, all the mystery cults in Greece were responsible for holding a unique secret within the collective lore of all the secret societies. That's why in esoteric tradition, people like Pythagoras are said to have been initiated into multiple of these mystery schools so they could learn all the secrets and have like a cohesive understanding of the lore. And the Temple of Artemis was dedicated to, well, not really Artemis. See, the Artemis of the temple is, according to archaeologists, a more ancient and localized version of the deity that would eventually become Artemis. And this version of Proto-Artemis had a lot more in common with Demeter and other Mother Earth type figures, evidenced by how her idol sports many breasts. Or bull testes. It's one or the other, we don't know which one. Either way, this is not your virgin goddess of the moon and wilderness, this is an earth and fertility goddess. And the school located at Ephesus is said to have kept the secrets of the earth goddess, powers which were deeply connected to the natural world. So many mystics throughout history believe that the powers of Artemis were sacrificed in the symbolic burning of the temple to imbue Alexander the Great with those powers. Why? To apparently protect the newly evolved rational mind represented in classical Greece against the wealth and decadence of Asia at the time represented in the Persian Empire. Yeah, I don't really know what to make of that myself, but Greece got pretty decadent pretty damn quick after Alexander died, so mission failed? Just open up Imperator Rome and play a Diadochi. Anyway, that was my weird video about fan fiction that people have written about Alexander the Great in an attempt to make this more than an ad. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you for watching. A reminder that Iskander's game, The Shadow of Macedon, is currently available for pre-order on Kindle and will be available in ebook and paperback on Amazon and anywhere else you might buy books, except maybe most bookstores. Buying the book is the best way to support the channel if you're interested in that sort of thing. But if you don't want to spend any money, just interacting with the video, of course, always helps. So, yes. This is a very exciting time for me. I'm very stressed, but a lot more of my videos are going to be centered around topics within the book. If you don't want to read the book, it's fine. You'll still be able to enjoy the videos, but I need to segue into these book ads. All right. So that's what you're gonna get till May.